and now start recording. Um, so thank you for that. I kind of want to just take a minute to um, talk a little bit about me and my career and how I think about things because I'm really coming full circle here, and I just am honored to be the city manager pro tem. Talk a little bit about neighborhood associations and what they've meant for me and my career as well as city manager. And then a little bit about how I see the role of city manager, and then just give you a quick update on a couple of large projects and take questions. So I don't think I'm going to take the full 10 minutes. So appreciate that, Chris, though. Um, so a little bit about me. I believe that I have known why I was put on this planet for a very long time. I decided to be a civil engineer when I was 12 years old. I have not really veered from the course of knowing that I like to build projects, but what makes me tick is that it's not just about the project, it's about building community. And you can do that many different ways, right? You can do that by doing what you are doing here every month and literally creating community through the good work of helping each other, as well as building some projects. But the puzzle pieces to get from the first part of design, of just the implementation of an idea through the design into the construction, is what motivates me, and figuring out the financing to make it all work. Every single one of those are puzzle pieces, and I've literally written a book about it. So that's how important it is to me to start a project right and get input up front, because in engineer speak, if you don't start a project right, you actually increase the risk over the life of the project rather than decrease the risk. If you don't all agree on the purpose of the project at the beginning, you are headed for disaster, and you will have spent so much of the taxpayers' money, right, and not actually have any outcome. And to me, that's something to be avoided at all costs. So every part of my career on my journey to being able to build big projects, it has been about learning how to build community at the same time. Um, we are literally built on that foundation of democracy, of ownership and decisions. And if you don't have ownership from across a broad spectrum, you will never have a project that actually comes to realization. So that's why neighborhood associations are so important to me. I was the chair of First Edition, and we moved here 30 years ago in August. And I immediately became the chair of the association after Jim Boland. Probably his first time. I think he was chair at least two or three times. Um, in about 1997, and immediately held a protest down on A Avenue for the crosswalk that is now a pedestrian signal by Dukes. We created protest signs about having safe crossings and walked back and forth across the street for an hour. And that was, and also got the traffic circle in as you come up to the library. They had been trying to get a traffic circle in for, I guess, a very long time, and being able to design that traffic circle as the engineer who had worked on traffic calming in the city of Portland, and then apply for the grant from the city and getting it. Suddenly, I was on my way to being a city councilor from a traffic circle. So it's really important not only to be able to see those issues in your neighborhood through to completion, but also the best city councilors start out at a neighborhood level or on a board and commission, right? And slowly build up that knowledge of how to participate in the decision-making process and how to navigate the politics to be able to actually carry it out. So I just that there's so many reasons that the neighborhood associations are important. Um, I see my role uh, is being able to help the council navigate their policy decisions and discussions and how to include folks, as well as the dual role of them being able to implement their decisions with the staff. And having had a career where I bounce back and forth between being staff to electeds and being the elected, um, it's it's great to be able to sit in this position and be able to work with the council and all of you to see these things through to completion. The fun thing is coming in right after the council adopted their goals, so it's very clear of what I'm supposed to accomplish. And I think you all know those 22 goals. I think they're 22, 21. They had one or two more than the 20 that they had intended to have. But the big projects there are the wastewater treatment plant, right? The library conversation, starting that and getting that off on the right foot this time. Because 30 years in this neighborhood, I would like the conversation to start with answering First Edition and all the neighborhoods in downtown, answering their question first, what's going to happen at that site when the library leaves? Because that's always been put off to last, and it creates the most tension and anxiety because this neighborhood needs to know what's going to happen before the library moves. Um, so we've got that starting along with the task force. The fire station, obviously, we can talk a little bit more about what I've been able to move forward there, and foothills. That's the massive stuff. And then there's a scattering of other things, including more transparency in the budget. And I'm going to tell you all, Lake Oswego at this point is one of two cities in Oregon where Scott Lazenby was city manager. And y'all remember Scott? Good guy, but he had a really different idea about how to budget. So I'm trying to figure out how that works here because it is very different than any other city in Oregon. And how to then provide transparency based on how he had that set up. And I think I've got some ideas, but we're going to have a staff retreat to help figure out how to meet that goal. On the fire station, just internally, the way this has been working, you all know Chris Artman, and she has been doing a amazing job getting us to the point where we are as the assistant fire chief. She has made it clear she would like to go back and do her job, which is actually being an assistant fire chief, not a project manager for a construction project. In order to do that, we have done an intense amount of work over the last 2 months to see if we had capacity internally for a project manager for the fire station, and we don't. So I have now found the money and started the job description for a project manager that will sit in engineering with Erica Rooney and under Stefan, who is the wastewater treatment plant project manager. So that that person will have guidance on how to do project management the Lake Oswego way, but will also come in with their own experience and can help us through that. I don't want this person just working on the fire station because we'll be ramping up the library conversation at the same time, but that won't take a ton of time at the beginning. The main thrust is the fire station through design and construction. Um, Hopefully by mid to late next year, we will be, as a city, having an agreement around the criteria for the site selection for the library and start looking for that site and narrowing it down and then start negotiating to buy that site. As soon as we get to the point where we're negotiating to buy a site, I would like this project manager to be ramping up, hopefully putting the fire station to bed and ramping up the library. So that whoever this person is going to be, because we still have yet to hire him, is going to be busy. And then Chris will be obviously moving the project forward until we bring on this new person. So she will get the design phase up and running, and then we'll be able to do a handoff, and she can go back to her daytime job and continue to be the subject expert on the project. So, um, and Melissa Kelly, our librarian, head librarian, has also made it clear to me that she does not want to give up her daytime job to be a project manager on a construction project. So we are setting this up so that we can all succeed. So that's a lot of where I've had to spend my time is getting these two projects off and running, um, as well as dealing some with the day to day. And one of those day to day issues is the events and parks in Lake Oswego are some of the best. And that has some spillover effects into neighborhoods. And so, after meeting with Dareth from Old Town, she had asked for a one person in Lake Oswego to kind of be a one-stop shop for any issues regarding events and just a lot of visitors, right? And dealing with the issues of that. And so I agreed to that, and I'm working with Madison Thiesing, the deputy city manager, on we're going to start a good neighbor policy discussion with the neighborhoods so that we have a policy, uh, basically policy stance on how to deal with different issues and what we can and what we can't do. And then designate somebody as that one-stop shop. So you should be hearing from her sometime, probably summer, fall, on a draft. So that's kind of a in the weeds day-to-day operations thing, but I thought I'd bring it up because it is really about the neighborhoods. And then lastly, Chris, before I turn this back to you, I just looked it up online. It is 4 positions. Um, Ollie, Trudy, John, and the Aaron, now Jackie position are all 12/31. They're all up in 12/31/2026.
Wow. Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's a that's a big election.
Yeah.
Biggest we've had for city council in a long time, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah. And it's good that we've got um hopefully we've got some people rerunning for election. So
Good.
I hope I covered a lot in there, but if you have any questions.
Well, one thing and if anyone wants to add or ask, please raise your hand. But I think, well, Rob, you go ahead. Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, sorry. So being the traffic rep for PNA, I mean, later tonight we'll hear a little bit about the traffic updates, but I'd like to ask a little bit different question that I've been curious on. How can members give feedback, especially towards the city's like policies related to EV usage, EV charging? You know, if you look at it at the state, I mean, we come across Lake Oswego as very EV friendly, but I'd argue that we're not. And that when you look at like the Lake Oswego Rec Center and the charges that they put in there, you know, instead of paying the charge, which is 9 cents a kilowatt hour that Lake Oswego gets, you know, they bump it up to 20 cents and they charge for parking too after you've been there 2 hours. You know, for regularly fueled cars, gasoline cars, there's no parking charge. And so the other thing that happens is a lot in the rec center, those chargers, people park regular cars in there that aren't charging just because they can't find other spaces. And then at the state level too, I think it's compounded because you know, the state's been very aggressive at taxing EVs in terms of registration and licensing. And they claim that, you know, we're not paying the fair share of fuel tax. But if you look at what's happening to our interstates, it's the drivers with studded tires that are ripping up the roads. And yet, you know, it's okay they rip up the roads. That's okay. They don't have to pay any extra charge. But when people are trying to help the environment, you know, it's like they get charged. So is there a way to get inputs? Because I've never been successful in figuring out how we get those inputs into like the Transportation Advisory Board or the city staff. I think we could do a lot to be more EV friendly.
I hear you. Having worked in Kitzhaber's office as the senior transportation and sustainability policy advisor, I have a lot of thoughts. But here at home in Lake Oswego, we do have a sustainability program manager. Her name is Sarah Stilth, and she would be the one that I would ask you to kind of contact. What I am assuming is you are right. I mean, those Blink chargers are private and they are there obviously to make money, right? They're there to provide a service, but they're also there to make money. And they want turnover. So I'm assuming it's, just part of the way they do business, the contract that we would have signed that here's what they're charging up front so we know, and also that this is how they get their turnover so that they make sure that they're making money off of those stations, right? So that's why the charge after 2 hours. I don't think it's not charging an electric vehicle to park. It's an incentive to get you to move along after you're done charging. So
Yep.
I hear you, and I think you guys can have your policy. I'm trying to be the city manager, not Metro Council president, which is what I was in the past. Um, I think that's where probably Sarah could help you, like what's in the contract, and I think also she would have some insight of what advice she gives folks to get people out of the spot if they're parking there and they're gas powered.
Sure. Thank you. I'll follow up and I'll take it offline. But one note is what you said makes a lot of sense, but that's not the policy of Lake Oswego. It's once you're charging and you're not fully charged, after 2 hours, they start giving you a parking rate, even though you can take more charge.
Oh, you're not done charging and they're
Right.
charging you after two
Yeah,
hours.
yeah,
I see.
yeah.
Okay.
But I'll follow up. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I appreciate that clarification.
Other questions, comments? Lynn, go ahead. You're muted.
Hi, Lynn.
Yes, hi. I'm also Lynn. My name's Lynn Gilbert. I've lived on South Shore for 15 years now, and this is my first PNA meeting. I retired last year as a nurse after 44 years,
Oh,
and
thank you.
yeah, and I always worked a long shift on Thursdays. So I was excited to be able to attend the meeting. Now, is this a general meeting or is this just for uh,
It's
everybody
a
seems to know what they're talking about? Like, is it a board meeting or
it's a regular monthly board meeting. We meet every month,
okay,
uh,
so but
second Thursday.
is there usually a general meeting? I mean, like,
There is April
okay.
But you're
in
welcome
April.
to be here. Anyone
Okay.
can come. You're absolutely welcome.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, like I said, I could never attend before. But when both Lynn and Robert were talking, I did have a question. So, as I said, I live on South Shore, just near Fernwood and the Palisades easement, and the speed limit there is 35 miles per hour, which means people go 45 miles per hour. And I understand that, you know, other places in Lake Oswego, first edition, the speed has been reduced to 20. I mean, I would love to just even have 25 because if it was 25, then maybe people would go 35. Um, I have talked to one of my neighbors about this, and they said, because I was like, who do I speak to in Lake Oswego about this problem? Because I'm afraid to go out and pick weeds in front of my yard because somebody might be texting or, whatever. I don't want to.
Yeah.
People come down that hill from Lake Ridge really fast, and
Yep.
and now that school's out, we've got teenagers and stuff too. So my question, I guess, then is there someone that I address my concerns to in city of Lake Oswego? My neighbor had said something about it was a state issue.
So yes and no. Um, The state has just recently given the municipalities more flexibility in setting their own speed limits. Before, we did have to go to the state and make the case.
Mhm.
But just recently, the city has gone to a 20 is plenty program for all neighborhood streets. So First Edition, where I live, is all neighborhood streets, literally. We don't have a South Shore except for A Avenue. And I believe A Avenue is signed for 35 coming into downtown, and then the blocks downtown are 25. That's my recollection off the top of my head. The answer to your question is I can give you the name of our city engineer, but I'm going to look to Chris for how you handle neighborhood questions, because I know that you guys work on these and then kind of help prioritize. Having worked with Chris just recently on Green Tree
Mhm.
and an issue that arose out there, I'm going to turn it over to Chris on how you want to handle it.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. Lynn, first of all, great to have you join us. I'm
Thank you.
glad to have you with us. All the meetings are public, so you're welcome to join us every month. Second, you can see John Thies's hand is up. He's your neighbor on South Shore, just west of
Oh,
Fernwood.
okay.
And,
Okay.
and he has been beating this drum for years.
Mm,
So we're well aware of the problem, not just on South Shore, but on other streets. The city just did a speed test on Green Tree, and we'll get into that later in the meeting. But I would say the city does have a response form that you can fill out a comment or complaint. But Rob Heap, who is one of our board members who's on the meeting tonight, Rob
hmm
spoke
hmm
already. Rob is our traffic and pathways coordinator. So all matters regarding traffic and pathways, Rob is the expert. And he's very knowledgeable. He was the chair of the Planning Commission a few years ago, so he knows the city well. And so I would say stay tuned, stay involved, and feel free to reach out to Rob, um, or through the P&A website. And
Okay.
yeah, I know John wants to vote here, because he brings up the speeding on South Shore regularly.
Right. Right. And just to go back to what Lynn just said about other neighborhoods in Lake Oswego being able to adjust their speed limit because they are a neighborhood. But this is a residential street too, even though it's part of a neighborhood.
Yeah,
So I don't understand the distinction, I guess.
we don't have, the P&A does not have the authority to change speed limits. That's strictly up to the city.
Right, right. But
I think,
I thought
Jonathan, do you want
I
to?
Well,
Yeah,
no, I
go ahead,
mean,
John.
as you said, Chris, I've been dealing with this for years. Will Farley and all the folks with the city and everything, and they have said countless times that South Shore is a thoroughfare and therefore it's not city's jurisdiction, it's the state's jurisdiction. And if you got problems with it, contact the state. That's what I have been told, and that's when I basically quit complaining about it because I knew that meant it would never get dealt with.
Okay, maybe I'd like to ask then Rob if he would follow up and get clarification on that.
Actually, Rob, you and I will work together to get an answer on this.
You're muted, Rob.
Sorry about that. Yes, I'll follow up with the Lynn. And I'd say, John, don't you give up. Daniel Wynn, my understanding, is a member of Palisades. He's our state representative. I would contact him and ask him to advocate for us. Make sure he's aware of the issues. I mean, I can reach out to him too. But, those state reps, I think we should use them.
I mean, I
um,
walk down South Shore all 3 times a week, and I think it's just a matter of time before I get hit by a car because it's
mhm.
crazy out there. Just
Yeah.
going down South Shore to Lakeview, it's nuts, and people just don't slow down.
Let me
Yeah.
make this commitment to you to follow up on that. And with Rob, before you start advocating to Daniel, I just want to make sure that it is not within our control now, first of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, what what our position now is if it is in our control. Um, and if we make an ask to Daniel, I want to make sure that you guys have the right information and the right ask. So,
Great. I think this is perfect. It's so timely that you were here. I think if you and Rob can dig down and then next month Rob can give a report and
sure.
then we can go from there.
Chris, if you'll
Um,
share with him my cell phone, that would be great.
Just one more
uh,
thing. All I was trying to do is get them to put a stop sign on Canyon just to slow the traffic down.
Mhm.
So they weren't just
Mhm.
screaming down the hill all the way down to the lake. You
Gotcha.
know,
okay,
Well,
Lynn, we need to
sorry.
move along. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Meg, did you have a comment or question for Lynn?
Yeah. So I live on Marjorie, which is also known as the overflow parking lot for Lake Ridge High School. And so I've been here 15 years and probably starting around 2018, 2019, the traffic along here has gotten really, really bad because there's more kids driving than they have adequate space for the high school to park. And so now they're going to all the neighborhood streets, and our streets are really, really narrow.
Mhm.
And so the kids are parking on both sides of the street, and it's hard for one car to get through, let alone one car and pedestrians. And so when I had Bella trying to walk along there, you know, she was scared to death because people go slamming across those. And so for a long time, we tried to get like the inner circle of Marjorie and Colwood to have that no parking during the school day. There's sections along there that do have parking, like the Colwood has no parking during the school day. Cloverleaf has no parking during the school day. But Marjorie and Banyan has a little bit. But so when Lake Ridge went in 71, the commitment that they made to the community is that they would not allow the kids to park in the neighborhood, which is, fine. But over the years, they've started to take off some of those signs. And so they can't park along Cloverleaf. They're most of the way they can't park on the other side. So if we can't get our neighborhood restricted parking, I'm requesting the city take down all of the parking during school, no parking during school days, so we can at least distribute the kids out so they're not on just a couple of streets.
Have you worked as a neighborhood on this issue before?
We have. And
Yeah.
when Nancy Sage was a traffic, she brought it up. Um, Nancy, Megan Phelan, has done a lot of work. She walked the neighborhood with us and we showed her some of the issues that we had. For example, at 3 o'clock, the kids go screaming out of here. So you don't even want to be on the street during that time because they drive so fast and they just aren't watching. Someone's going to get hit.
Okay.
I'm just going to I'll be really quick because I know, Chris, we've gone over. I think in Meg's situation, if we just had a pedestrian path, a, a path that people could walk safely, like that area is from Palisades Elementary School to the high school, there's no sidewalk. So we right now have no safe pathways to each school. So that's something I know my daughter goes to Palisades and now she's going to go to Lake Ridge next year. And we bicycled the route from Palisades to Lake Ridge, and it's not a safe route. There's no fully protected. We've gone many different ways. So I think that's something that's very important to us and the community, that if there's space, I really worry about John walking every day on South Shore because there is no space. So I think the issue there, if you're going 20 or 40, you're going to get hit with someone going 20 because there's no room for people to walk safely. So, I mean, in that area, I like there's places within our neighborhood that just don't have safe places for people to walk or bicycle. And that's something that we can improve. But I
So
just
what
want
is
to tell you, I'm very, very excited that you want to do something about the library. I have 3 kids and we go to the library every week and we love it. And I think every good community, in the sense, has a place. So I was curious later if you could tell us about your neighborhood and why it's important to know what goes in that space. I didn't quite understand that. Like if
Okay.
that space then becomes open, but that's later, just to
Yeah,
understand
no,
the comment.
no, I think it's important. So I think there's fears in first edition that the city would move the library and then allow for development that they didn't like. It could be anything ranging from keeping the existing library and selling it as an office use and having that traffic in the neighborhood. We have the ACC, the Adult Community Center, and the library. And I think people just, and there's a lot of cut through traffic from Highway 43 going to the other side of town, right through the neighborhood. So there's a lot, just like every other neighborhood. I mean, there's very localized issues. So they're worried from that standpoint, but then all the way to cottage clusters. And we've got the two cottage cluster developments in first edition that are not selling. In fact, one of them, they're doing June 18th, they're doing a auction to sell them. They put them on the market originally at 1.2. They went down to 950,000, and the auction is starting to sell them at 550, and then auctioning them off. So it'll be interesting to see. But you can see that kind of range of worry. They have a deep desire to have a conversation about another park on that land. And then what kind of development, because the council has been very clear, and I'm glad that they're being clear about their intentions. One, we need a new library. Two, it cannot be where it is. And three, we need to make some sort of money off the existing site. So uh, the way we've set it up is that there'll be a task force that is made up of the neighborhoods around downtown, the business association, the DEI board, the sustainability, like everybody's going to get a chance to provide like three different scenarios to the council of how that land could be used after the library goes away. Once that settles down, it's very interesting. The librarian, Melissa, has done her research and gone back in time. And is just loving the research of it all, of course. And that is that when this library was proposed and put on the ballot, it was actually built not in the place where it was proposed to be built, which was actually what we're looking at now, which is more towards Lake Grove. That was their primary, like that was their target spot, was to make it more equidistant to both sides of the community. And it ended up in first edition. It also ended up on a lot that was half the size they intended, and it was 23% smaller than they had intended. So it was not in the place they wanted. It was not the size they wanted. I'm like, how did this happen? So it's almost deja vu to city, right? If somebody had come back from the 1960s, they'd be like, you're having this conversation all over again. So, I'm pretty excited though, because when I was on city council, we had talked about the fact that the library needed to be, it needed to be moved. It needed to be moved to a more central location. And the mayor at the time, Judy Hammerstead, had suggested that we talk to the school district because the first bond measure for the school system had just passed, and Lake Oswego High School was going to be rebuilt. So the question was, could we put a library on that site with the high school? And they said no. At the time, they said, we don't want those two uses next door to each other, a public use next to the high school. So that kind of fizzled away and died. And now we've had at least two more conversations about how to do this. But in none of those conversations did they start with talking to the neighborhoods in downtown and saying, you're going to lose an asset. We need you to feel comfortable about what's going to replace it.
If we could step off of traffic for or keep on traffic,
Oh,
I'd
okay.
like, yeah, Rick, go ahead quickly,
Just
please.
very, very quickly. Lynn, if you could give the title of your book. I bought it, I don't know a couple years ago. I have dog-eared that thing to death. And boy, there is such great information in there. So I think definitely for Rob, and maybe buy a couple copies for to pass around with you. It's changed my thinking about how to approach working with government. So thank you
Oh
for
my goodness.
the
Rick, thank you.
Thank
Um,
you for writing the book.
I poured my heart and soul into it. There's another book in me. There's another one. Um, it's called Roadways for People, and it's just literally, um, again, how do you get everybody on the same page just to the purpose and need of the project so that you can, and there's just been so much history about how we, as traffic engineers, as highway designers, how we have the problem statement in our head and we pursue the solution to that problem statement and never talk to anybody else. And that has had some really bad outcomes um, throughout the United States and specifically in neighborhoods that are more low income and people of color. Um, so, let's not do that anymore. And Jenny, to your point, just about the narrow lanes, this whole city was built on the premise of these narrow roads with no sidewalks and no stormwater management and no, in some ways, the United States was built on the cheap. And we are now paying for going back and trying to retrofit it to work for people. So,
I'd like to jump ahead to the staff report section of our meeting, but specifically, Rob, since we're on traffic and Lynn, you're still with us, Will Farley put some traffic sensors down on Green Tree, just near Carter Place, which was where that young man was hit a couple of months ago. And so, Rob, if you want to give a summary of the data that you got from Will on that, those speed sensors.
Oh, yeah. I was going to try to share. I don't know if I.
wait, let's
Oh, yeah, I
take
should be
bets.
sure.
Do we take bets on what we're about to see?
Sure. If anybody wants to give any
I'll
prediction.
take you out to coffee if the average speed is 38.
All right, let's see. Again, a little bit of a disclaimer here. I did message Will. He's not finished the data yet, but I did crunch the data. I'm a neighborhood member. I'm not a traffic engineer. I don't have a degree in civil engineering, so this is my analysis. I think it's correct, and it'll be interesting how it compares to Will's. But first, and I'll try to go pretty quick here. Why does it matter? We hear a lot about speeding. And so, if you look at the 20 mile an hour kind of, 20 is plenty. I mean, it involves the survivability, the impact. So if we're going faster, the greater the likelihood that you're going to, have a bigger impact, a death maybe. And a lot of the drivers admit to regular speeding in residential areas. And I'd like to also say, when I hear all this stuff, like, can we ask the city? The thing that I find is that it's us, it's the members that are in our neighborhood that are speeding. So, part of it is talking to our neighbors and saying, hey, we don't like this. And I see a lot of times where people are complaining about speeding, but they themselves, I see speeding. So, the ask here is, what can we do too? In addition to asking staff and all these other people for help, I think it's up to us to do something too. Really quickly, what are the problems we keep hearing about as we come to these meetings? I mean, it's really like, speeding number one, as we heard, stop signs, people not stopping or getting more stop signs, getting them focused around schools and parks, parked vehicles, kind of the parking concerns, the narrow streets, we heard that. And then we didn't hear so much, but a lot of distracted driving too. People are on their phones, they're doing other things. And I know in P&A, I've actually seen like those brick mailbox that got hit by a teenage driver who wasn't paying attention. It was a horrific crash right on Meadowlark. This is definitely an issue in our neighborhood too. So let me jump into the study and I'll kind of go pretty quick. So I picked two files. There's a lot of the pneumatic tube data that Will shared with us. So I picked two files based on Chris's input, which was the westbound speed study for Green Tree between Lowenberg and Carter Place. Carter Place was, again, where I think there was a lot of concern. So the data showed that it was collected May 12th and 13th. This seemed to make a lot of sense. There was about 1,487 vehicles that passed over that 2-day study. It averaged about 743 vehicles per day. And I'd say the 15% of the people, were driving over 34, but 85% were within that 34 or less. And the average was 28. So I'm not sure what you said, Lynn. Was it? So that was the average. The
I
median
said
again
I
was
said 38.
Oh, okay. So if you're looking at 20 miles an hour, we're kind of exceeding it on average in that area. And then the largest share of the traffic was between 26 and 30. There were 567 vehicles that were counted, which is 38%. The next largest group was slightly over 31 to 35. And then, there was some abnormalities out there that 0.7% were above 45 miles an hour. So there was a couple outliers where we see people speeding at a much higher, but that's a very small percentage. The next one is kind of like just showing the volumes and kind of the peak hours. So, again, for each day, you can see the data there. I won't reread it, but how many vehicles are traveling on each day. And then this is kind of interesting. The peak times, I was surprised. Again, the data is the data, but it kind of makes sense that, in the morning it's 8 a.m. and the evening it was around 3 p.m. on the 12th. And then on the 13th, it was 8 and 5. But those are pretty common times when you'd think that folks would be traveling the most. So that seems to make sense. There's no big surprises there. And then I put a little chart in here just to show the distribution. And you can see most people are driving in that range of 26 to 30. And then
You can share that if you want, Rob.
Oh, it's not sharing?
No.
Sorry, let me share again. It must have stopped. Okay. Oh, sorry. Can you see it now?
There we are. Yep.
I'm sorry. I thought you guys saw the other stuff too. So we can send it out. But yeah, I'll just keep on going since we're a little short on time. Yeah, so I talked a little bit about the peak hours. I showed the speed distribution. So this is kind of a graph view of where were the where were the speeds? What were the speeds where the most number of people were falling into, or the most number of vehicles? It's 26 to 30, and then there's kind of a bigger jump at 31 to 35. So, not surprising.
Rob, it's signed 25, right?
Well, the
Speed
school
limit's
zone
20.
goes down to 20. Chris, can you comment?
Yeah, the speed limit's 20. And I looked at this chart and the data, and frankly, I was astounded. Less than 5% of drivers are obeying the speed limit there on Green Tree. And 70%, over 70% of the drivers, and this chart shows it, are between 30 and 250% over the speed limit. I
Yeah.
mean, look at the tranche there between 26 and 30 and 31 and 35.
So the reason that Will did this is to look at the ability for us to put the speed bumps on Green Tree, because essentially what's going on in Green Tree is you have a very long distance from South Shore up to the school that has literally like no driveways, and just a couple other access points, which means that people feel very free to speed, because there's no friction, right?
Yeah.
With driveways. And so if there was a way to slow them down, it would be with the speed bumps, but something you guys are going to have to discuss. But that's really what I'm trying to get him ready to come to you and talk to you about, that kind of traffic calming device.
Yeah, I was really shocked with this data, to tell you the truth. I mean, this to me, this is the 20 is plenty even working? I mean,
yeah, no, Chris, that's what I was going to say. I wasn't an advocate for the 20 is plenty, because if you look at the critics of it, is exactly what Lynn was saying. Where you see problems is where the streets become more like, it looks like a drag strip. You got a clear shot, you just go. And if you look at like Overlook in front of the high school, it's the same problem. And so, it's. I think that the putting signs out 20 is plenty. Putting the speed limit to 20 is not going to do it. It's not going to replace things like the speed bumps and the
Yep.
other calming devices. Or making curves or making the streets a little bit narrower. Those are
Yep.
natural deterrents that's going to lower the speed. And I think people were disillusioned a little bit to say that they thought that putting a sign and putting the rules out that 20 is plenty is going to make a big impact. So I don't think this is just specific to Green Tree. I think it's probably all across the city where we have 20-mile-an-hour zones.
Yeah, I guess I'll just end with this. Our roadways were not designed for 20 miles an hour, right? They were designed for much higher speeds, and assumptions in the past were very different, and that's fine. Just putting out the signs is the start of an educational campaign, right? And that's only one of the many tools we have. Education, it's the 3 E's, right? Education, public safety or emergency, and engineering. And so it's going to have to be a combination of all those things, just like it was when we reduced and put out 25 the first time, right? Because a lot of these streets were designed for 30 or 35 miles an hour. When we design a street, just generally, it's being designed for 5 to 10 miles over the posted speed limit. So that's what makes you feel like you can go faster, and you're seeing that in the data. So how the street is designed has a huge impact, and in this case, this is one way through traffic calming devices is to bring the speed back down into a range that is safer. The other is through enforcement. And I think the council is certainly looking at the different ways to enforce 20 in different speed zones. So just know that they know that this isn't the only tool to start bringing the speeds down.
Right, thanks. Chris, I think just to continue on pretty quickly here.
Yeah.
Just kind of summarizing the data, the speeds are concentrated in the upper 20s to low 30s, with the typical speed being 28. I mentioned the 85th percentile is 34 miles an hour. So most drivers are traveling, that's the max, or they're traveling below that. It does have, from my opinion, light to moderate traffic volumes. We're not seeing abnormally high numbers. When I was looking at averages and just kind of calculate, again, I don't have nearly the knowledge that Will and Lynn and others have, but it seemed like the volumes made sense. So nothing surprising there. And then there was another one that was on the eastbound, so the same kind of stretch, but it was looking at traffic going eastbound. I summarized this a little bit differently, kind of what you're saying is that the speed limit's 20, but only 66% of those vehicles were going at, or only 4.6% were going at or below that. Most drivers travel faster than 20. The average, again, was 28, something very similar to what we saw for the westbound. Peaks about the same, hours of the day. So very similar between east and west. So I wanted to also just then I'll kind of end here to say, what can we do? Again, I think it's up to us to communicate to our neighbors, try to work between the neighbors to say how important this is, and try ourselves to drive 20 or below. Stop at the stop signs, go extra slow near the park and the school crossings. I think that's the other thing. We know those are the sensitive areas where there's lots of activity and kids. So do that. And then the other thing that I thought as we were talking about last time about the incident at Carter Place was, we did have the traffic officer come to our board meeting last time. He reached out and he said, hey, we can be reporting some of these speeding spots. They want to know. So, feel free to report this to the city. The other thing I think we could do is, if you have kids and going to school, have people walk with them and try to, work with the kids to understand the risk. And then as we're talking about here, work with the city and petition for these calming devices like the speed hump, the signage. We can continue to reach out to the city staff and try to also get help there. So that was it. I didn't want to go on too long. But we can send
Okay,
this out.
thank you,
People can
Rob.
look at it offline too. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, why don't you, if you would email it to Carrie, she'll put it on our website, then everybody can look at it.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And Lynn, I know you need to run. Thank you so much for joining us and hanging in there to the end. This will be the first of many chances to meet together. Thank you.
I appreciate you all and look forward to continued working with you all. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
Stay safe.
There's only one. I mean, I think it's already 8:01. So let me cut to the chase. There's only one issue that I have that I want to make sure we cover tonight, and that is to get the feedback from the board on P&A and adjacent neighborhood associations hosting a candidate forum for the 4 city council candidates this November. So the forum would probably be September, October, and I think we'd probably want to include Old Town, McVeigh South Shore, maybe Blue Heron, Westridge. And so the 4 or 5 neighborhood associations would host this event. It would probably be at Lake Ridge, and the candidates would all be invited, and we'd moderate it, and they'd have questions and so on. I think this would really be important and helpful for P&A to take a lead in this. I know other groups like Lake Corp will probably have a candidate forum, but that doesn't mean we can't either. So I'd like to get some idea of consensus, feedback. I don't know that it needs a vote, but
Hey, Chris. Chris, just some feedback. My personal opinion, again, others can differ, but I would rather have a candidate forum that's specific for Palisades. If we're going to have an hour to have the candidates come, really have that hour where we can talk to them, where it's just going to get diluted. And I know from the other neighborhood associations, they don't like that. I know from the Neighborhood Chairs Commission that, they want to have a single one. And in the past, we've said, no, we'll agree with that. We won't have Palisades. But I think we're large enough and we have enough, specific Palisades concerns that it would be nice just to have a session focused on Palisades and have their complete attention. So I'll support whatever the decision is, but my personal kind of preference would be to have a dedicated Palisades session.
Excellent. Okay, feedback. Others?
I think if we could get 100 people, sure. But if it's just like us here, then I think we should really act as a community and just like you could go anywhere and hear the speakers too. I just think we have to be respectful of their time.
I think
I
the
don't know if
biggest
we're going to
issue,
be, but that's my opinion.
I think the biggest issue is the fact that limited time and those candidates are going to be going to a lot of different events. And so I kind of agree with Jenny. It would probably be better just to have a big event. I mean, there was one that was done by the Old Town, I believe, or actually no, First Edition, where they actually had the candidates at a table. And I thought that was great. And you just kind of rotated between the candidates. So something like that would be incredible. So you can have one-on-one time with them rather than them doing a formal presentation.
Interesting. Okay.
Or we can make sure like there's 20 questions or 30 and it's divided equally. And we as a committee decide as a board, what are the top 5 questions P&A wants to ask?
Yeah.
That are specific to our neighborhood. So then,
So on
we
the
might see there's commonality between other neighborhoods too.
So on the idea of it P&A alone or P&A in conjunction, what are the thoughts? How about let's see a show of hands for people that would support P&A alone. 3. Show of hands for people that would support P&A in conjunction with neighboring. Okay, so that's the consensus with neighboring. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, you know what? We'll continue the discussion. We don't have a date, but I will, when several candidates have reached out to us, to me, through the website that they want to get involved, come to a meeting, meet the board, so on. And I've said, that's great. You're always welcome to join us. But we'll be talking about hosting a forum. I want to share one last item because it also deals with traffic. Last night I went to the Clackamas County Transportation System Plan update. Every 13 years they develop a new transportation plan. And so I attended this. It was down at Riverside High School. And I can report that the roundabout at Stafford and Rosemont is shown as a potential project for a 2-lane to be upgraded to a 2-lane roundabout, which is something that we've been pushing for a long time because of all the traffic there. But that's the good news. The bad news is that it's a tier 3 project on their timeline and budget. And what that means is tier 1 are the projects that are already funded in the first tranche of 600 million. Tier 2 are projects that would be funded if they happen to come across an additional 600 million. Tier 3 are projects that they know they need, but they have no funding plan for the next 20 years and no idea how they're going to fund them. So the roundabout at Rosemont and Stafford is probably going to stay the way it is for at least for most of my lifetime, maybe some of you too. Okay, any last thoughts or reports? Jenny, did you have any news on the Mormon church on Overlook? Were you able to dig up anything on that? Okay. Mormon church is on the market, or maybe in escrow, we don't know. Trying to figure out who it might be with. Okay, any last comments, thoughts? Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you so much. And obviously, traffic is going to be first and foremost on our page for quite a while here, which is good. And thanks, Rob, for your report and for summarizing that. I think it was great that Lynn heard all of that and could be on board. She's all ears right now because she's essentially campaigning. She wants the job on a permanent basis. So between now and November are the greatest likelihood of us capturing her attention. Okay, thank you,
Rob,
everybody.
for putting that information together. I know. I just want to thank Rob for putting the PowerPoint slide together. I was wondering, maybe we should think about like condensing it, not just a PowerPoint, but like a text message we can send out to neighbors. Like, I don't know, like a little visual, like a meme, like, did you know? Like, I don't know. There's something when Rob, you said people need to slow down. We all need to decide to slow down.
exactly.
That's very different mentality. And I don't
Yeah.
like, it would be helpful
Yeah,
if we
good
have
point.
messaging or something we could use to like share out with our neighbors.
Good point. That
So
could
thank
go out in the July newsletter in a couple of weeks. Good. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Meeting is
Thank
adjourned.
you.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.